Welcome, everybody, to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. And today is Good Friday, Friday, April the 2nd, 2021. And our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. And we'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. We'll give Michael just a minute to get dialed in. I will direct everybody to our website, as I usually do, whyagain.org. Click on the bullseye or the Start Here button. They both will take you to where you'll find all the worksheets and lots of audios and videos and things. There's one link that says special shows, special MP3s of radio shows. A lot of them are where we've walked somebody through doing a worksheet. Some of them are just very detailed explanations of different aspects of the work, and so we put them out there. And someone had requested that I put out the piece of the show where Michael and I discussed our 4-day sabbatical. So it's now out there under the special MP3s as well. And I'll also say, if you haven't been to the website, we now have all of the DVDs converted into MP4s. Thank you, Darren, for doing that for us. And so they're half price. They're $20 each instead of $40 each for the 2-hour ones. And it's download. It's not, you can't download it, but you use the link that I would send you, and then you can watch it, stream it online, however often, forever that you want. But that way, and it's got a better quality, and it just seems to work a whole lot better. So if you go to the buy products, you'll see another link that says MP4 videos, and you can click on that. Welcome, Michael, and we do already have a question on the floor, so I'll welcome you first.
Excited to be here, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're honored that you're going to participate in this conversation, and let's go with what's on the floor.
Okay. Well, Dr. Tim had been talking with Tim Bingham about his anxiety over some different things. And so I thought that the question in the chat room had also been addressed, but Tim said that it hadn't, so perhaps you would address it. So they were speaking of anxiety, and Lisa in the chat room says that she had always classified anxiety as a thought, and to explain the difference, why it would be a feeling. And then she responded again and said, it's unease that I feel overall, and I'm using the thought to drive anxiety. And then she said she's got it. So she picked that up from what Tim had said to Tim Bingham, I guess. But if you would like to add to that.
Nice catch. Well, there are many different thought disorders that can produce any given feeling, and we have, categories of words that we say are feelings, which are reflections of thoughts. And so the idea is to allow yourself to really start to decode, to look at the subtle energies in your mind. And especially if there are things that you've habitually, you come from a family system or culture that habitually denies and therefore dissociates from it, coming back into relationship and being conscious of what's the thought that I'm creating this with. And then, of course, when I throw that thought out, I can be free of whatever the feeling is that it reflects. My take is that mechanically, when we think a thought, we know that that thought becomes a molecule, a neuropeptide in the structure, and when it lands on the cell is designed to tell us the quality of the thought that entered. So if I put in the thought that is joyful, that reflects as joy, when it hits the cell, I go, oh, this feels so good. It literally creates, quote unquote, the chemistry that we call joy. And if I put in a thought that doesn't belong in the system, is of a disintegrative nature, then the cell's going to shout out with, oh, no, not this again. I don't want to deal with this feeling, this reflection of the thought. And so the idea is to change your thinking, to move in a different direction. Sometimes people say, well, but look at what just happened. Of course I would think that way. Well, no, actually, if you think in a way that creates disintegrative energy within you in a situation, you literally debilitate yourself in the way you can, the resources that you have. You shut resources down that can help you to deal with that situation. So when you get things on track with your thinking, then you get things on track with the feelings that either enhance mental, emotional, cellular, physiological function, or feelings that detract from all of those things. So we're working to get them back on track. So I hope that makes sense and fits.
And we had a hand just go up.
Great. Let's say hello.
It's 314. 314. I think that's Doug.
Yes, it is. Hello, Michael.
Hey, young man. How are things there? And we've been thinking about you and flooding and wondering how it's going there.
It's okay so far.
Oh, good.
I'm in the process of doing a worksheet, and before I dive into this, I just wonder if you have any thoughts or advice. One of the things that's hard for me to do on the radio show, that I do anyway, is to, I feel like I'm putting my dysfunction out into the world for the rest of my life in the global domain when I engage on this show. And what I'm looking for is a thought or an idea that you might have that would support me in being able to do that more easily. Because I'm going to do this, I think, anyway. But that's a challenge and an obstacle for me. I think, what about, what's happening in 5 or 10 years from my life? And, I think, how's that going to be? But do you have any thoughts about that? I mean, part of me is if it helps people to grow, great. But any thoughts that would make that easier?
Would you lay out the dilemma once again, Doug? I'm not sure I got it.
I feel like when I get on the show, which I love to do for help and support and to help others as well, and I lay out my dysfunction as a human being,
right,
the issues I have in my life, the craziness that's going on for me, I know that I'm putting it in front of the world on the internet for the rest of my life.
Right.
And I have reluctance to do that. And I'm wondering if you have any on how I might, maybe there's a subject for another worksheet, but overcome my resistance to doing that.
Well, I would go a slightly different direction with it. I've asked myself the question, is this something that's coming from hostility and fear? If so, then I dismantle pardon me?
Clearly from fear. It's like, I think what would it be like for a politician, to, somebody, or what if I become somebody of some notoriety, and everybody's going to research this and bring up everything that ever happened in my life, and, the woke culture and things, the way people are about anything, that it's like I don't want this weaponized against me at some point in my future.
Right. Then I of course would clean up my fear about things being weaponized against me and look at how I weaponize things against myself and or other people. And so I clean that fear out. But there was a second place that I was going to go with that. Is, first, if it's coming from fear, then I do my work around it and then check in again and see what's appropriate. And or if it's coming from guidance, this is not an appropriate thing for me to do or bring up, then I'd follow my guidance and not do it, not bring it up.
Okay.
And for me, if I were, of course I expose a lot of things about me that somebody could weaponize, and my take is, if I became that person of notoriety in the future or what have you, I'd say, yeah, and here we are being honest human beings, creating a space for healing and support for real true healing. And by the way, the way you're putting barbs into this, what's going on in your world that you would do that? And maybe you could become the politician of note that opens up a whole different dialogue in the culture and puts an end to that silliness that people do in the political world. bring truth and honesty to it. So they're both sides of the coin.
Like that. Yeah. Yeah, I found that I constricted on the guidance part, like, oh, well, is this my guidance? And then, but this what you're saying now is exactly what I'm looking for. Actually, something to open me up. So yeah, okay, those are all good thoughts. I like those. So let me move into my issue. Okay, so as the show was opening, I realized that I just had a great deal of feelings of stuck and sadness and a lot of emotion, and I was like, okay, so I started a worksheet, and I know that by doing this, something will happen that will be helpful for me. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but that's my goal, of course, is to do the forgiveness process that will liberate me from my painful realities. And so the object of my attention, I'm just going to, unless you guide me somewhere else, I'm going to just read a little about what I have down so far.
Go for it.
The object of my attention is Diane. I am being blocked from loving and expressing love to Diane. My thoughts are, I am isolated and blocked, thus lost from being in loving expression with Diane and joy. My punishment thought was self.
Let's just go that far right now for a second.
Right.
So the way I hear you reading what you're reading, it sounds like, and it might not be, but it sounds like denial. And the reason I say that is it sounds like, as I listen to those words, well, there's something out there. I am being blocked. Like, I have nothing to do with this. I'm not blocking love, but I am being blocked. And I'd offer that's the epitome of denial. If you're not expressing, experiencing, projecting, sending, extending, expanding love, it's because you're not doing those things. It's not because you're being blocked. Nothing can block you from doing that. I mean, not even if Diane canceled the thought, stood up with an axe and said, "Don't you come near me with that love," would you be blocked from doing love? Excuse me, Diane, if you're listening.
That's powerful already. It's like, okay, here's the value. I wouldn't have had those awarenesses. So to express why I feel that way.
Perhaps shifting into responsibility language. Here I find myself once again blocking the presence of love in me. I'm blocking myself from experiencing myself as being love. And I'm really ready to be shown why I do that and what that's about, and to have those blocks forgiven.
Michael, but would that not be if Doug were the object of attention? He's doing this with Diane being the object of attention.
Well, but if Doug is blocking love, it really doesn't matter what the object of attention is. Doug is blocking love. The salient point from the get-go for me right now is that thing out of the thought that I am being blocked, like something is blocking me, to I'm the one who's doing the blocking. I'm preventing myself from experiencing myself as love and extending that love. And so whether the object of attention is Diane or myself or, Billy the dog, if I'm blocking, then I want to look at why I'm blocking and what do I need to do to unblock that presence in me. Does that make sense for your thought, Jean?
Yeah, it does. But I guess what I'm thinking is when someone's usually doing a worksheet, the whole part, number 1, A, B, C, D, E, or whatever, is all denial anyway. Because that's the part where we're saying this is what happened and this is what I think and this is what I feel. So, I don't know.
Well, the difference being moving from projection language to responsibility language. If I start to language accurately, if I language I am being blocked, I've given a message to my mind. Mind developed for me a perceptual construct that shows me that something's blocking me. I am being blocked. Something outside of me is causing me to be blocked. When I shift into just the simple responsibility to, I realize that I'm blocking myself from experiencing or expressing the love that I am, then I've given my mind to start to show me given my mind permission to start to show me a more accurate construct of what's really going on. Does that make sense?
Are you asking me or Jeannie?
Yes.
I defer to you. Go ahead, Doug. Do your worksheet.
I find value in what Jeannie's offering and value in what you're saying, Michael. As soon as you, I mean, it's like this is kind of taking the worksheet in a different direction, than I was going. But there's huge value in it, and immediately it's like I see that this, it's like I wrote down, I am blocking myself from experiencing myself as the beingness of love. Well, that would immediately supplant. I started breathing on that immediately. It's like immediately when you said that, I was like, oh my God, that's what I really want. What I put down as my goal in my worksheet is to be the flow of loving expression experiences with Diane, which is a different goal. Like I could replace that goal with this goal, and that might be a different worksheet or whatever, or it could just be a change in this worksheet. But what I recognize is that that's what I truly want. Is it's like this. Maybe my denial is that I think I have to do this with Diane, and then I think that she's somehow keeping me from doing it. Which is your point, that she's can't stop me from being an expression.
No. But your mind, like all of us, can come up with all kinds of excuses and reasons why. Whatever, I should block love or, it can be 1,000 reasons. And, of course, the idea of the worksheet is to get to the root of what's the active underlying thought disorder that has me blocking love, and am I willing to forgive that, remove that? Right,
and I want to do that. And I feel like there's, this takes me in the direction of not loving myself or not believing I'm worthy or not believing I'm worthy to love, whereas the other direction was taking me into, that I'm isolated here in Missouri. Diane doesn't really want me up there. She's the one woman I'm focusing on. There's no other woman that is authorized for me to express my love as towards or with. I feel sequestered and isolated, and I'm just sort of summarizing some of my word of the expanded 1D. And I'm in pain without meaningful existence if I'm not engaged in loving interchange directly with my love. All else is meaningless. She's the most important person in my life, and so on. And I therefore feel lost without purpose. I'm not motivated to do anything else, nor does anything else hold reward or motivation. And hence why I live. My relationship is in jeopardy. And then I wrote, Diane says I'm too dependent upon her. And this is sure looks dependent. I said, my meaning, peace, joy come from my interacting with her. And so how can I create inside, outside meaning, purpose, joy in my life? And that what you suggest is really the answer to that. It opens the gate to that. I also wrote the whole world is especially my beloved constitutional republic, is in an insane downward spiral. I just want to be with Diane in loving interactions and exchange. What other purpose, of course, and so I just, that's laid it all out there. And I'm saying that I'm hearing from you that getting out of denial about this is the answer to all those questions I was just writing. You know, it's like if I can just recognize that I can love and be love and express love, and nobody's stopping me from it, nobody's blocking me from it. You know,
exactly. And you just outlined your 77 times 70 worksheets. You know, go back and re-listen to this last 5 minutes and take each of those thoughts, and there's another piece of the puzzle of the complex of thoughts with which you block yourself from experiencing yourself as who you are. Your created essence is love. And you've just reflected the carbon-based memory content that comes up powerfully enough to draw your awareness from who you are as created love into identification with everything from, you know, someone else blocking you and the world or the circumstances in the country. And so each of those, for me, would be a different worksheet. There's a different goal involved. When I cancel that goal and let this construct that blocks, or that, let me say it differently, that screams loudly enough in my mind that I go, oh, that's me, that's what's doing it, that I fall into identification with that, you know, self. You know, you go back to Yeshua and he says, in order for you, being, to live, you, non-being, has to die. And you just outlined a bunch of thoughts that non-being holds to keep you enamored with its BS. And as you forgive each of those, you'll weaken those frequency patterns, those energetic patterns from brain cells, until they shut up. And then what's left? Just Doug. Just the presence of being. And so in that space, as you deeply incarnate in your physiology as love and realize that that's the truth about you, then what can block that but another thought disorder that needs to be forgiven? And the behaviors of others in the world don't create our thought disorders. We can play the pretense that when that thought disorder becomes active, I build my brain's image of them out of it, and therefore it's they who are doing it to me. But the truth is, it's all an inside job. It's all a reflection of what I'm doing, what my carbon-based memory is doing. And each time you forgive and get back, nice breath, and touch into that state of being, then what do I need to do to maintain this state of connectedness and being? And carbon-based memory is going to come up and shout and scream and give you all the excuses it has. You know, I shouldn't be loving toward them because look what they just said. Look what they just did. They didn't obey me. They, you know, whatever. And of course, I join with you and recognize that I'm describing my own process. You know, all of us are in this boat together.
Right. Yeah, all of our human condition, non-beingness.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons for creating distance, you know, I make sure my relationship's on the other side of the country or in a city far away where I can only go occasionally, is then I don't get into the intensity of what I really need to deal with. And when I find someone who says the right words to resonate the intensity of what I really need to deal with, I'm going to shut them up in a hurry and change them, or I'm getting out of Dodge. I will escape from communication and have nothing to do with them, because they give me too many opportunities to learn forgiveness, and I don't want to go there.
Well, that would be
and I've got a whole story that I can successfully tell about why I'm leaving them, because it's them and what they said and what they did. I mean, what they said may have been, you know, one sentence out of a million sentences they've spoken to me, but boy, that one gives me the good excuse to kick them out of my life. And, confronting ourselves is not easy. Say again?
What you're describing now, I think, would be applicable to both Diane and I. It's like in my current experiences that I'm being kicked out of her life or held at arm's length from her. I mean, I have a huge reality that she's distancing from me for the last 3 years. And yet I've also been, of course, feeling like I got to get out of here or leave or distance or something. But it's just. Yes, it's painful to be. I mean, it's immense pain comes up when we are put into a position where the
notice we're slipping back into denial again. When you're put in a position.
When I put myself in
how about when I volunteer to go into this position? I'm going to show you a whole different process. Because you notice you've been through in that position 87 different times with 42 different people, and you're the only one that was there every time you were put in that position. Who put you there? Hint.
Yeah,
not
it's voluntary.
Yeah. And how do I volunteer for that position? My automatic decision system kicks in with the unresolved thought disorders.
Right. Yes, it does. Yeah, and that happens in my partner as well, and then we're both immersed in that content coming forward.
How cool to find somebody with a matching bag of garbage. You'd almost think that the Creator created the world so that people with matching bags of garbage would be resonated into each other's space and give each other all the opportunities they need to heal. You'd think it was the design of the world. I think there's a conspiracy. They talk about conspiracy theories today in America. I think that's the number one conspiracy. God wants each of us to heal and therefore designed the universe to give us every opportunity that we need. And, of course, as we know, healing, facing what's inside, isn't Dr. Feelgood.
No.
In fact, I bet, the reading I was going to do today is from Chapter 9 in my book. And there are actually some pictures with a dialogue. And I bet that's what's up for reading today. And I bet if I reached for the book right now and read it, now I wrote this dialogue 25, 26 years ago between these two people. And you know what? I bet I'm quoting you if I were to read it right now.
Okay, I guess the matter.
Say again?
I guess that's what's next. If you want.
It's a bitch how predictable it is. Let me tell you.
Well, I've noticed that.
So let's go for it.
Somebody's orchestrating things.
Oh dear. So I'm going to go to page 50 in the book. Why is this happening to me again? And if you don't have it, you can go to. We spread several tens of thousands of copies around the globe back 25 years ago, when they're still available on Amazon, even though the book's out of print. You can pick it up for a couple of bucks on Amazon or eBay, or you can go to our website and download it free. But anyway, so we're talking about, oh my goodness, the topic of this chapter is blockage of truth. Now, how did we get to this? That's probably not relative here, is it, Doug?
No.
So what I have on the page are 4 sets of diagrams. And in the first diagram, we have a man who's called Macho Man. And so I'm going to read the little bubbles that are his voice and her voice. She's nice woman and he's Macho Man. Okay. And so here's the dialogue between their matching bags of garbage. And you'll see that if you were to look at the book, you'll see we've got a spiral built in that shows either the downward direction or the upward direction that's possible. And then you'll see that each is triggering the other. So here's the macho man act who is suppressing his feelings. And we identify, if we look in, I've got like stick figures, if we look in his head, his disease is fear. And then we look at her, we've got a stick figure of her, and if I look inside of her head, it's the nice woman act, and she's suppressing her true feelings, and her disease is anger. And so he says, just leave me alone. She says, why can't you just do it the way I tell you? He says, you make me angry. And she says, I'm sorry. And then underlying in the unconscious, we show macho man saying to himself, women always just put me down. And nice woman in her unconscious is saying, men are no good. So that describes the first frame. Next level of the conversation, macho man says, it's all your fault. Nice woman says, I can't do anything right. And then we look at what's happening in macho man's head, unconscious, and he says, what's going on in his unconscious is, I must keep my fear hidden. Need to stay in control. Nice woman, inside of her unconscious, what she's saying is, must keep my anger hidden. Need to stay in control. Matching back, each one of them wants to stay in control. How shocking. And then, so what's he saying to himself in this second frame? In this case of it's all your fault, and she's saying, can't I do anything right? He's saying, I have to get out of here. And she's saying, men always leave. The fourth frame, Act 4 in the conversation. Macho Man says, it's okay. I'll let you off the hook. I'll forgive you. And nice woman says, I forgive you for all the pain you've caused me. Oh, good. Maybe things will work out this time. And then what we see happening in the unconscious, the inside of the stick man head drawing for Macho Man, is he says, or we're informing him, this form of forgiveness maintains the need for his act and reinforces his quote-unquote superiority, which keeps his reality of fear in place and hidden. And her response is, or unconscious, what we're showing in the diagram, the stick figure in her head, what's going on is forgiving, of course, in quotes, and being forgiven, again in quotes, without a change is what's happening. Without a change in the internal reality structure means that she will set, quote unquote, it up again. Being nice keeps her true feelings hidden and keeps her from looking at what she needs to heal. So the unconscious thought in this third frame is, she'll destroy me if I don't get out. And the unconscious thought that's going on for her as she talks about forgiving him and maybe it'll work out this time is, fat chance. I will never be loved. I could just kill him. Then we go on to frame 4. Are you breathing, Doug?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Is everybody else that's listening breathing? Good. Awesome. So, and just remember that everything that we're talking about that's going on for both of them at the unconscious level is turned into a picture world that makes it logical to believe that this is all being caused by this other person out there on both sides of this equation. That's how projection works. When remembering that this carbon-based memory is filled with digital information, thoughts, and those thoughts, when activated, literally turn into a construct, a picture in the mind of what I think I see in the world, and never realizes what I'm seeing that's a reflection of the content of my own thought structure, the content of my own mind. And then, so the fourth frame, Macho Man says, "You are so messed up. I'm out of here." Nice Woman says, "Why are you leaving? What's wrong with me?" And then inside of Macho Man's head is a description of what's going on for him. Terrified to look at what's really going on inside. And now fear becomes terror. Inside of Nice Woman's head, terrified to look at what's really going on inside. Anger becomes rage. And then Macho Man's unconscious thought is, I want another drink. Nice Woman, unconscious thought is, I want to eat. One of these days I'll speak up. So there's the kind of matching bags of garbage that allow people to stay in blockage of truth, of recognizing that here I am in my perceptual construct bouncing up against someone else, and I believe that this construct in my mind is true about her, and she believes that the construct in her mind is true about me. And the truth is, my perceptual construct is true about me first, and her perceptual construct is true about her. But as long as we keep speaking in the language of dissociation, that is denial, you made me, then the mind just perpetuates that kind of BS.
Yeah.
Resonate anything for you?
Well, I think what I feel mostly is it brings up pain and compassion. I just feel like how when you look at the unconscious thoughts that are going on in that dialogue, and you stand outside of it and think, well, how could they possibly be, having any success? I mean, obviously, as long as that's what's going on in them.
Let me describe. Yeah. Let me just flip back here to one of the opening pages in the book, and this is on Roman numeral XX. And here's, for me, and I wrote this again 27 years ago. The challenge is, if we don't have tools, here's where we live. So if you remember the page that lays out life without tools is sleep and hell. Information without tools is impotence. Power without tools is dictatorship. Relationship without tools is codependence. Knowledge without tools is dangerous. Commitment without tools is hopeless. Abundance without tools is loss. Health without tools is impossible. Learning without tools is chaos. Ambition without tools is corruption. A world without tools is war. Having tools and not using them is a world without tools. And unless we're constantly applying the tools to this non-being mind, which, you and I came in on the scene very late in the game. Like, how many generations could each of us, if we got into our ancestry, trace back and look at, how many of those ancestors died in war, died of horrible diseases, divorced, murdered, abused, drank. I mean, how much of that could we each look at in our bloodline and recognize that most of us came on the scene into a pretty unconscious world and a pretty unconscious family system. I think about one friend I had who was a minister and bragged about how his father was in the ministry and his father's father was in the ministry. And he was one of the most conflicted, relationship depressed, destructive toward his relationship and drank like a fish person I'd ever known. So, there was the story about how, look, we came into this conscious and but it was life without tools. Now, what's the alternative if we choose to step into it? Life with tools is awakening into light. Information with tools is power. Power with tools becomes service. Relationship with tools is interdependence. Knowledge with tools is safety. Commitment with tools is a blessing. Abundance with tools is easy. Health with tools is natural. Learning with tools is education. Ambition with tools is accomplishment. A world with tools is peaceful. Having tools and using them leads to aliveness. But there's the key, is the tools have to be consistently, persistently used, and it takes a community. That's one of the reasons we do this radio show, so that this community is available, whether somebody's in some isolated, little village in the middle of, Russia, or whether it's, downtown Detroit, that there's a community of people that we can keep bouncing off of, because this multi-generational database called the body-mind unit, literally for each of us, has 1,000 generations of these stories. I mean, what was that, Dragnet? There are 1 million stories in the Naked City. And those stories, when the mind turns them into pictures and we actually think we see it, I mean, it really is out there. Look, I see it. I'm describing it to you. And when I don't have a clue that what I'm describing is a construct in my own mind that comes from my unresolved content. And it's so easy to, you get a deep taste of living as the presence of love. And then that old carbon-based memory comes in with one of its projections. And it's so easy to slip back in and forget that, I could have my physiology filled with the most exquisite, delightful, sweetest presence of love that ever existed. But my thought disorders lead me to kick that out, to literally exclude that, and go back to what has been locked in bone within my structure. And it takes constant, conscious, consistent, persistent effort to dismantle that inertia-bound perceptual system whose direction was set long before I was even a twinkle in my father's eye. That's why, if we go back to Yeshua, and this situation was no different 2,000 years ago, let's go back to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, and we hear him saying, to he or she that overcomes, they will not taste of, they will become a pillar in the temple of the Creator. That's the body, and shall go out no more. That's a pretty big promise when, everybody in the culture is dying in 100 years or less, and if they make it to 100, they think they've lived a really long life. That's a pretty big promise. Shall go out no more, shall become a pillar in the temple. And that, to me, gives us a look at why one community is so important and support, why we're having this conversation. Because, of course, this conversation isn't just for you, it's for me. It's for everybody that's listening. Because this inertia-bound, multi-generational database will keep telling its story till the cows come home, until we get to the root of what needs to be removed. And then, it's kind of like pulling a tooth that really doesn't want to come out. It takes serious, sincere, committed work. So I breathe with you. And everybody else is listening that this is touching right now.
Right.
So what's your highest thought, Doug?
Well, my highest thought, of course, is I want that which you just quoted Christ saying, and that's been an ambition for some time, and more immediately, the experience of being immersed in the presence and awareness of love.
Yeah.
And I think what you wrote there about tools with and without is fabulous. And I asked for clarification or confirmation, really, of what I heard you say, the interpretation of those words being that the temple, I think it was right at the end, something about will be a pillar in the temple.
Will become a pillar in the temple. Yeah.
That temple meaning the physical body, right? In that particular.
Yeah. This is the temple, and a pillar is a fixture. You look at the columns on the Colosseum. The Colosseum's gone. The pillars are still there. I mean, literally, if you've gone to Rome, the Colosseum, it's pretty much wiped out. But baby, those pillars are standing. They were something solid that would last forever. And what I hear him saying is, I have laid out a body of work for you to do, and when people really come close and confront it, when I tell them what it really means, they say, here's a case where that actually happened, and literally half of his disciples left saying, too hard a saying, too hard. That's what they said, and they left. They never came back. And then they went off and made up a theology about how all you have to do is call on this magic name. Oh, no, there's no work to do. In fact, you can't even do anything. So you just call on this name, and then everything will be okay. But if you go look at the community of folks that are stuck in that theology, there's a lot of pain and suffering, and a lot of sexual abuse, a lot of child abuse, a lot of spousal abuse, a lot of alcohol abuse. The man gave us a body of work to do. Those who didn't want to do it turned it into a belief system and a dogma. And if you listen to many of them, you think that the dogma is the only thing. We have the right dogma. Like there are 3,200 sects of so-called Christianity, and each one of them has a dogma. And the man never even said, here's the dogma you want. He said, I have a purpose. I come to bring you life. What is life? Life is love flowing through a cell. And our generations have learned how to inhibit that life flowing through a cell and make up a whole picture world, a whole projection about the only reason I'm not experiencing life is because of what you did. And most everybody in the world is standing there with the finger pointed at somebody else who did it to them. And they've got a whole story, and their story is so convincing because they actually literally see it. Like they think with their eyes. They don't know that it's just a construct of their brain, but they see it. So it must be true because I see it. It's such a convincing lie. That's a big piece of work to do to overcome that inertia-bound, multi-generational database that constructs pictures of everybody else being the problem. And, of course, we tend to be stuck in the serial game of, well, yesterday it was that person, but I got rid of them, so they're no longer the problem. But now it's this person. Well, wait a minute. Let me get rid of them. Now, there, I got rid of the problem. Now, another one. It's their problem. See, it's their fault. That's why I'm experiencing this. It's like, no, the reason you're experiencing this is because you haven't dealt with this yet. And your mind is a liar. In fact, it's the father of liars. Yeshua said there is no truth in him. If the father, that is the sire, the initiator of your experience, is your carbon-based memory system, there is no truth in it. And if you let that run your life, then you, like, absolutely, predictably, 100% get to live the title of my book. Why is this happening to me again? Or as some people have titled it, Michael, I understand you wrote a book called Why Are They Doing This to Me Again?
Yeah, the quote that you gave for Christ, was it after that they left, saying this thing was too hard? I've heard you say this before. It seems like
it's actually in Revelations that the quote comes to where he says, to he that overcomes, he shall become a pillar. But it's a different situations where there are a number of disciples and they say to Yeshua, what, in essence, what they say is, well, what do we need to do to please God? And he gives them an answer. He uses an Aramaic metaphor that has been totally misinterpreted, but he says to them, you've got to eat my body and drink my blood. And the Greeks, of course, have made that up to be communion, but why, if they said, what do we need to do to please God? And he said, well, you just go to communion. Why would anybody say that's too hard a saying? Obviously, it didn't mean anything about going to communion, because that's a pretty easy saying. I mean, you get to do that just about any Sunday on 1 million street corners in America and 32,000 different sects of Christianity. That's obviously not a hard saying. Actually, that makes it pretty easy. But if you look behind that, the meaning of those words in Aramaic is basically, you got to do your work. You've got to show up in your body as the active presence of love, as I'm doing. It's an idiom. The example I like to use that idiom that makes it, I think, a little clearer is, let's imagine that I am a maker of cabinets. I make the finest cabinet. I'm acknowledged as the finest cabinet maker in the world. And Doug comes to me and says, Michael, I want to learn to make cabinets like you. If I were Aramaic, and it's still a live language with a live metaphor, it's still used. If I were Aramaic, I would say to you, Doug, well, then you've got to eat my body and drink my blood. And that wouldn't mean you have to go to communion. What that would mean is, okay, Doug, so you want to learn to make cabinets like I am, you're going to have to learn everything that I know about wood. You're going to have to learn everything I know about the grains of wood and how to cut wood. You're going to have to know everything I know about finishes and mixing different chemicals to make the finishes. And you're going to have to know what I know about doweling and how to set a dowel and how to make sure a corner fits perfectly. And you're going to have to know everything about finishing these woods and getting this type of sheen and that kind of stain. And you're going to have to eat my body and drink my blood. When he said that to them, here's a guy who's showing up, no matter what people do, as the active presence of love. And they're used to raging at their spouses and hating their neighbor and fighting with and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And in essence, he's saying, you're going to have to give all that up and show up as the active presence of love in order to experience the active presence of love. And they said, too hard a saying. And I can just imagine, Oyvind, as he walked away from this guy saying too hard a saying, he's like, what the heck? I got this good thing going. I've got this businessman on the other side of town conned into thinking that he needs to pay me this much for this product. And man, I'm making 10 times as much as I should be. He's telling me I have to get honest and give up all that extra profit. Too hard a saying. I'm out of here. And A.B. says, that wife of my neighbor, when he's off doing his work every other Thursday. We get to play a little footsie. He's telling me I have to give up that? Too hard a saying. And literally half of the disciples left at that point and never came back. Too hard a saying. Well, obviously communion isn't a big deal. No hard saying there. So he must have meant something else. And actually, there are two different words that the Greeks use in the context of that particular passage. And one of them, when he says, you've got to eat my body and drink my blood, he uses a word that would be much like sitting down to dine, like you're going to just sit down and eat something. But then when they kind of go into resistance to it, he repeats it. And I don't know whether this is accurate in the Aramaic or not, but you can do some research and see it in the Greek. And the second time, and they really objected when he got to this because he used a different word. It wasn't just sitting down to eat. It was like he used a word that would be more like describing an animal chewing and gnawing on a bone. And they were like disgusted. Ooh, gnawing on a bone. Like, and notice, when you and I, or I and anybody else that calls in, get into these principles, what are we doing? We're really gnawing, really, revisiting and reworking and moving to build new brain cells and new understanding. We're really gnawing on these principles until finally the mind goes, oh, I got it, okay. And that's what it takes. And most people are like, well, no, I want to go out and make money. I want to go out and have fun. I want to go out and, have a steak dinner and a bottle of scotch. You want me to stay home and study and gnaw and do my work? Half of the disciples walked away and never came back. And the ones that stayed still weren't getting it. When you look at that at the point, right at kind of the pinnacle of Yeshua's demonstration, and he's getting ready, to meet the high priest servant who's going to have him mercilessly slaughtered. And here's Peter, he's proclaimed as the head dude. And you notice what he calls Peter in that context. He literally turns to Peter and calls him Satan. Peter's going to step in and he's going to stop the high priest servant from slaughtering Yeshua. And Yeshua turned, people think, well, the fathers, they got it. Peter didn't get it. Yeshua never would have literally referred to him as Satan. Now, remember that Satan in Aramaic means the resistor, one who misleads, but he turns to Peter when Peter wants to stop that, and he defines what he means by Satan. He says, Pete, you want to stop this because you are in the mind of man. You're in your perceptual constructs rather than the plan of God. There's a bigger picture here, and you can't see it out of your little 9-bit mind. So there's a work to be done, and here we are, down to the last minute of the show. You got another thought?
Just thank you. Awesome, right on. Lots to gnaw on there.
Lots to gnaw on, isn't there? Pretty awesome. Yeah. The original Incredible joining.
What was that?
The original Incredible Joiny. Joy.
Join me? Joy. Oh, joy.
Journey.
Joy. The original.
The light. A joyful opportunity to open and heal.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
all right.
Purpose.
Well, the show's going to cut us off in just a few seconds, so I'm going to say to everybody, thank you for the listening ears and the speaking, and create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Blessings. Bye-bye.